And now it's time for the weekly speaker spot. Each week, a member gets 8 minutes to share with the group further insights into their business or enlighten the group a little bit more about themselves. Members can also use this time to problem solve or seek assistance and advice from the group as a collective. The time is yours to use how you wish. So, Misty, over to you and your wonderful crown for this part.
Excellent. I just had Simon burst into the room suddenly singing.
Yay.
So.
Nice, serenading by your husband. Woohoo.
It is good though to be serenaded suddenly. All right, so today's speaker here at Business at Breakfast 10 a.m. we have the wonderful Brendan Murphy from Duckrow, formerly Will HQ. Give me 2 seconds. I'm just going to set up my little space here. So here we go. We've got Brendan Murphy from now Duckrow, formerly Will HQ. So a little bit about Brendan. Brendan was the founder of Will HQ, which has now passed its name on to Duckrow, as in how to get all your ducks in a row. And he's the first provider of fully digital will making services here in Australia. He's an accountant by qualification, a business person by persuasion, and a juggler by necessity. Originally from Ireland, he's lived in Australia for 11 years and describes himself as numerate, political, humorous, and curious. His aim is to get every adult to make a will, and in his spare time, he sails the Sydney to Hobart, and he does plan on one day learning Irish fluently. So with that, Brendan, I thought that you could take it away. You've got up to 8 minutes to tell us more about the wills, what you're doing, the wills, what things that we need to know that's changed. So we've heard Brendan, some of us have heard Brendan speak before and a couple of times, and many of you have never heard Brendan speak at all. But along the way, as things have changed, it's always good to get updates when things change so almost dramatically, but not really in a way. So Brendan, it's you're up. You've got up to 8 minutes. Let us know what's going on.
Okay, thanks, Misty. So let me start off with 2 words. Catholic priests. Do you know why Catholic priests can't actually marry? It has nothing to do with religious law or anything like that. Until about 1,000 years ago, Catholic priests, like priests in virtually every other religion, married, had children, had possessions, and strangely left those possessions to their children and their wives in their wills when they died. Now, Rome, being a very effective and efficient fundraising operation, copped onto this literally about 1,000 years ago, and they changed ecclesiastical law so that priests could no longer marry. So they ended up leaving all their worldly possessions to the Catholic Church, and that has lasted for 1,000 years. So priests are looked after. How about everybody else? Let me quickly show you just a couple of slides. I won't go through too many. Yeah, you can see that. Look, that's, I'm only trying to balance the group that's here today, given the majority of females. So I'm showing you an all-male group at the moment. These are all celebs who died over the last number of years with no will. Now, don't try and read the small print there. But if you look at the bottom row on that slide, what stands out amazingly, and I chose these guys at random. I was showing this slide for quite a while before I realized you had 2 guys in their 20s, one in his 30s, effectively one in his 40s, Martin Luther King, and then every decade up until Picasso, who actually was 90 when he died. So the point about a will is it's for any human being who literally can't tell the future. And yet, because wills have always been on paper for the history of the world, people have put them off. They've been too expensive. They've been highly inconvenient. And none of us actually think that we're going to die tomorrow. But what we're trying to do is make will making affordable, secure. I'm looking for the right slide. Digital, and something that people think about in the same fashion as insurance. And Paulina and I have talked about this before. As I said, we're late to the party in terms of launching what we were doing because of tech. And the English cricket team is a really good one to blame for all of the delays, because it's nothing to do with me whatsoever. But really, what we're trying to do is get people to understand making a will is like having insurance. You don't need it until you do. And in fact, if you don't make a will and you disappear, you're fine. You're down there pushing up daisies, happy out, playing your harp or doing whatever you're doing, but you have left an enormous mess behind for loved ones and family, etc. So what our solution looks like is this. It's very simple. Each step is guided by an AI-generated video concierge. And Paul, I'm sure you'll be delighted to see this. We're actually using simple AI here. And while this young lady speaks in English, part of what we're trying to do is reach people in Australia whose first language isn't English. So Hindi, Mandarin, etc., 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 will actually follow. And the idea is making a legal will in minutes, not weeks, not months, and basically not forever. So just really, wills is not a topic that you really talk about at parties or when you go for your glass of wine or your beer, etc. And yet when you get into it, there's an enormous amount of stuff that people go, oh yes, I know someone who did that or didn't do that. And there was a story in last week's news in Victoria about a couple who were disinherited by a court of $4.5 million because there was an ink splodge on the written will of the gentleman who died. The court couldn't put themselves in his mind, so it actually had to make a decision based on the evidence in front of them. And they said, the ink splodge is there, it's crossing out the names, therefore he probably meant to disinherit them. With the technology that we've built, that would not happen. It's digital, and what's more, we provide an awful lot of evidence that is designed that if something goes wrong, you can actually display how someone was thinking, what their intention was. So the advantage of digital over paper is very clear. It's not easily lost, defrauded, damaged, altered, etc. It's secure, it's easily updated, it's much more affordable. You don't have to leave the comfort of your own armchair to actually get this done. And the reason I'm showing this little slide, which I'm sure you're briefly looking at, is that we are the top row of that table. And again, anyone who wants to chat to me, I'm more than happy to chat, as everybody knows. But there are 8 features of a valid will on the top of that table. We tick all 8. Even lawyers only tick 5 in general. They will not automatically communicate with your heirs, with your executors. They don't automatically remind you. There is no digital security, etc. So really what we're trying to do is engage with you and everybody you know to promote the whole concept of having a will. So let me finish. And again, clearly you can't read this, nor do I want you to read this. I'm putting it up here because these are triggers where people should think about something as simple as a will. And I'll just pick out a few family related, you know, getting married, having children, children getting married, becoming grandparents, retiring, getting divorced, getting remarried, blended families, etc. Buying a house, selling a house, buying a business, selling a business, traveling overseas, getting an inheritance, taking out life insurance. All of these things are really, really routine. And of course, people do not update their wills traditionally because each one would cost hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. You do it digitally, there's no extra cost effectively. So let me just leave it at that and actually go back to this. The purpose of Duckrow is digital will making. It's legal in New South Wales and Victoria. Queensland has introduced discretionary acceptance of will making. All other states will follow. It's driven by COVID. And we just want people to remember, you know what? You don't make a will for yourself. You make it for your loved ones. So remember, get your ducks in a row before you go with Duckrow.io. Thanks, folks. Thanks, Misty.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Brendan. All right. So I have some questions for Brendan. Before we do, I just want to make a couple of comments, having known Brendan and had him out for a couple of years now, is what I like about a digital will is it gets a conversation started at home. It's really easy to go off and do your will, say with, well, so for me, with Simon, we can just go off and get that done. But then the boys aren't, the boys are 11 and 13, right? So, how many times do you speak to 11 and 13-year-old about having a will done? But very interestingly, both of their grandfathers have died in the last 2 years. And of course, the will has come up because somebody has to settle the estate. And so as that comes up, any problems around the settlement of these estates has come up. It's been big discussion in the house. So by having a digital will done, Simon and I have started bringing up with the boys going, now who wants to be in charge? And then why should we put you in charge of this one? And then what happens later on and where does it go and how does things get split? So it becomes just general conversation. And everybody has an idea and knows what's going on. It also, since moving so far away to Chinchilla, 1,200 kilometres away from family, it's also opened up the conversation in my mind. And I called my mum on it and I said, now that we all travel 1,200 kilometres every Christmas to go visit family, what happens if we all die in a fiery car accident? Because Simon and I have life insurance. Actually, we would need to update that in the will to go, where does the cash go if me, Simon, and the boys all die together in one hit? Interesting what family members believe as to where it should end up, whose side of the family, which niece and nephew, who should be left out and who shouldn't. So it's just an interesting conversation starter to see where the fights would actually start if you were to go away. By having a digital one online, it kind of makes you start the conversation. So that's what I like about it. Thanks, Brendan. Sylvia, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, Brendan, I have spoken to you before about this issue, but I was just thinking, is having a digital will something that when a person dies, that it's easier to submit for probate than if you've got a paper will?
Look, that's an absolutely timely question, Sylvia. These things started becoming legal 2 years ago. And of course, the probate authorities weren't used to it at that stage, and there were definitely problems. Now they're fully acceptable, but it's like any other technology as well. It'll move from the stage where you used a dial-up phone to now you've got your iPhone or your smartphone or whatever. They will actually, this is a guess, but in a few years' time, like everything else digital, we're guessing that the probate authorities will insist that it has to be digital. So with a tiny bit of luck, everybody in this call is going to be around for a long time to come and can tuck it away while all these changes happen.
Yeah, no, it's just that my girlfriend, what's ended up happening is that her family lodged a 1983 will as opposed to the 2018 will. And because probate's already been granted, there's a shit fight going on that none of us all need. Yeah. And I'm just wondering if something like that, if it's a digital will, would that in fact make that process that little bit easier?
Look, 100%. Without going into the detail, I spoke to a high court judge, a retired high court judge, about 3 months ago, and went through everything. And you know these guys you do not mess with. This is a guy that you sit in front of and go, I feel like 12 years old again. And I didn't know what he was going to say. But at the end of it, his opinion was that what we do doesn't necessarily cut down on the number of actions, but it provides really clear legal evidence so a court can make better and quicker decisions around anything to do with challenges. So challenges often come because families fight with each other, but what we can do is provide really an insight into what the will maker thought, because it's recorded and it's on video and there's lots of evidence.
Excellent.
Thank you,
Thank you so
Brendan.
much, Brendan. Paul Vallet, you've got your hand up.
I do. I have two quick questions and then just a quick comment. First of all, are you coming? Is this going to be available in the US?
Look, the answer is yes, but we really have to push Australia first, Paul. And the other answer is it's only legal in the state of Washington in the US. So there's 50 states and a bunch of your territories have got to get their act together, just like Australia does.
Oh boy. All right. Next, second question is, if a paper will appears and this digital will, And they're
Yeah.
in conflict.
They're not. Let me anticipate your question, because one of them is going to actually be dated, and the court will always accept the
Continuous.
last will. So it's only the paper will be accepted if it's later than the digital, but if the court suspects that it's been fraudulently altered, that's going to be an issue. The point about a digital will is there's never any question about the timestamp or the version.
Yeah. And then just a last comment. It's VALAC, VALACH, 1L. Paul, those of you who are looking to add names to beneficiaries or anything, and I'm in Arizona in the United States in Avondale, just so there's clarity here. And, you know, Misty was saying, well, you know,
Someone's got to end up with the money if you're going.
I was just going to say 1L, VALACH in Arizona.
You've
And
given me
my-
an idea now, Paul.
And my very quick response to that, Paul, is I'm well aware from the news that Phoenix in Arizona has had record, it's over 110 degrees, which is about, I don't know, 50 degrees bloody Celsius.
It's
for
actually
20
over
days.
115. So
Yeah, I've been
2
tracking it.
days
It's
in
been
a
over
row.
115. I've been
So
tracking it.
if you don't have a will, go out and make one, because people are popping their clogs left, right and center over there.
Claire, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about how the digital will, I assume it travels internationally, so it's accepted. Because I'm thinking as an English person that has family overseas,
Yeah,
I mean, I'm thinking like traditionally, perhaps somebody would have got on an aeroplane to come to a lawyer's office here to cite the paper document. And I was just curious how that kind of digital kind of, footprint works across an international kind of.
Look, that's a big question, and I'm not a lawyer, and obviously will never ever give legal advice. We refer someone, but there's some simple answers to that. Like you, my accent isn't exactly local. We still have a house back in Ireland, so your will is submitted for probate in where you're ordinarily resident. So I'm in, you know, even though I'm literally sitting in Sydney at the moment, I live in Perth with my family. So if I pop my clogs in the morning, will goes for probate over there, and then that is actually administered wherever my assets are held. And there are rules around this, which are relatively straightforward. But my will would be fully acceptable in Ireland. Where you get into complications is if you had very little over here and you had lots over there, or if you had assets in multiple jurisdictions, then you're talking about probably using specialist lawyers to make multiple wills to cover everything. But if I have one house in Ireland, bunch of property or whatever in Australia, all I need is one will, and then my executor can actually ensure that that's resealed in Ireland, and it'll be implemented over there. When you've got common law jurisdictions framework, as the UK, Ireland, Australia has, it's generally not a problem. Might be a little more challenging if you're trying to do it in Siberia at the moment.
Thank you, that's great. Thanks very much.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So I'm just watching the time, Joe. I'll let you keep going on. If anyone has more questions with Brendan, just contact him. His contact details are in the chat, and just book in a one-to-one to find out more.
Thanks, Misty. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Misty. And thank you, Brendan, sorry.